a minute ago. Just in terms of time, this one we're open to.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the special meeting of the Bronxville Planning Board. We rely on the agenda tonight, which is the application for Iona for improvements to their baseball field. Thanks to everyone for coming out. We appreciate the interest everyone has in this potential project. Just a few things about sort of the order of operations here. First, we'll hear from the applicant. They've updated their application, providing additional information, given the chance to present about that. We also have some of our experts here tonight. We, on behalf of the building, council and consultants to help us look at these kinds of projects. That's helpful to have with us also. And then there'll be an opportunity for the public to be heard. We'll have a public meeting as part of this after we get through those first two steps and give everyone who would like to a chance to speak. We've also received letters from members of the community, and we can assure you that all of us read those letters very carefully. So if you're not here in person, we always review and take those into account. I think one thing I want to clarify in terms of action this evening is there has been a new parking study provided by Iona, and we will need time to review that. It come in sufficiently before the meeting for that to be included in this meeting's agenda or reviewed by our outside consultant. So whatever we do tonight, I expect that there won't be final action on the application tonight, but as in the last meeting that we had with Iona, I think we'll all learn a lot, and both from the applicant and from our outside experts and from the public, and that will inform us more and give us more information and hopefully help us make the best decision here. So with that, with the meeting open, I propose we first consider the minutes from our meeting a week ago. And does everyone have a chance to review those? And if so, does someone like to make a motion? Move to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, good. So now, to the matter at hand, if whoever wants to speak on behalf of Iona could come up to the mic and identify yourself and what your presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Mark Weingarten. I'm a partner in the law firm of Del Bello, Dinellen, Weingarten, Wise, and Whitaker. It's my pleasure to be here tonight representing Iona University in connection with its request for site plan approval to permit certain modifications to the baseball field on its Concordia campus located at 182 White Plains Road. Joined by a number of people here, our team from Iona, Mike Smeriglio, the VP of Facilities and Campus Operations, Matt Glowowski, our Athletic Director, Richard Murray, the Assistant VP of Facilities, Susan Fiore, our General Counsel, as well as Joe Castaldo, the Director of Bronxville Campus Safety, Buildings, and Grounds. You won't hear from all of them, but they're here if there are any questions in case there's anything that we need to address a little bit later on. Seated in front is Cynthia Reynolds, who's a Senior Associate at our architecture firm SLAM, who you'll hear from in a few moments, as well as our engineers at Langen, Michael Tucker, the Senior Project Manager, who will also address some of those engineering issues in a few moments. As you are all aware, we know we've been before you, but we'll do it just briefly. Iona acquired the 28-acre former Concordia campus in January of 2022, and in approximately the last 3 years, it has substantially invested in that campus to make it the home of Iona's New York Presbyterian School of Health Sciences, as well as its state-of-the-art Kelly Center for Health Sciences. Iona is committed to graduating the best and the brightest who are so desperately needed in the booming healthcare field, and this campus helps us serve that mission. The campus, just as it did for its predecessor, also houses numerous facilities for performing arts and athletics, The baseball field is located on the roughly 9-acre parcel on the east side of White Plains Road at its intersection with Rose Avenue. Iona's initial discussions with the village began about a year ago. Iona filed an application in December of last year and worked with village professional staff and its consultants, responding to comments and producing reports and analysis, which led to Iona filing revised plans in April of this year. We first appeared before this board on June 11, presenting the proposed modifications necessary to enable the baseball field to meet the Division I standards. At that meeting, comments were received from your board and your professionals, and subsequent to the meeting, a memo was produced by your engineering firm, KSCG Consulting. We responded to the outstanding comments in a letter to your board on September 22. Also in September, we not only responded to those comments, but we also amended our site plan application to include the property currently housing the tennis courts in order to incorporate additional stormwater management systems, which will result in a reduction of runoff from the property to Crawford Street by an average of 70% for the 110 and 100-year storm events, which you'll hear more from Mike in a moment about that. On October 8th, we received additional comments from KSCG, and while we have not yet had time to respond in writing, our professionals are prepared to respond to many of those comments this evening. The proposed project is really rather basic and simple. We'd like to maintain the same use that has been used on this field for quite many years, just make it a better facility. The proposed improvements consist of leveling the field, upgrading the dugouts, bullpens, spectator seating in the press box, adding a scoreboard, providing accessibility from the parking area to the field, adding safety netting, an outfield fence, a warning track, and a bullpen area. Essentially just making better the field that's there now. Again, we stress there is no field lighting proposed, as all games will be played during daylight hours. We anticipate roughly 16 to 22 home games between mid-March and mid-May. We have a fall practice season where there may be 1 or 2 exhibition games played. Last year, we averaged 87 spectators per game. The impacts from this use compared to other impacts from development which are permitted in the zoning at this site are frankly minimal and not very different from the use of our predecessor. So with that as summary, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy, who's going to take you through a little bit more of the specifics of what we're doing and the changes we've made since you last saw the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. For the record, my name is Cynthia Reynolds. I'm a landscape architect with the SLAM Collaborative. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your time and attention as we continue this conversation. So quickly before we dive in, the big hit items in terms of what's different and what we'd like to touch on today. The drainage system has been adjusted. Mike will speak to that more in a few minutes, but you'll see we are now showing that the tennis courts will be resurfaced. The intent is that the surface will be the same as it is currently. It will be a fresh surface after the drainage construction has been completed. The other change that you can see a little bit, we used to, in the previous plan, have the walk continuing along further down Rose Ave and connecting down to the courts approximately here. We have instead pulled everybody in off of Rose Avenue as soon as we could and had that connection happen interior to the site. So let's get into this a little bit more. This will go for me. There we go. All right, I wanted to back up just a little bit because it's been a while since we went over the project drivers. So just for those who are just tuning in and a refresher for the rest of us. The field right now has a sloped outfield, which is an unsafe playing condition and not ideal in any respect. So our biggest driver is to get that to be a safe and functional outfield. The dugouts and the press box will be improved. Perimeter fencing will be replaced and improved, including some safety netting to help keep the balls in the field as much as we can. We'll be providing a scoreboard in this area, batter's eye here around number 5, and then we're going to improve the accessibility. Right now, there's no accessible path from the parking area, the main parking area for the facility, over to where the informal spectator seating currently is. because we will be generating a more planned out and intentional use, we want to also provide a better circulation flow. So this is the design as it is currently. You can see the safety netting that goes around the perimeter of the field. It's 40 feet high in the outfield and 20 feet along the sidelines. Again, 40 feet around the backstop per standard. We have some new dugouts for the teams, a raised press box and spectator seating area, which will hold approximately 141 people, including 6 spaces for ADA persons. And then it also provides a warning track, which is not currently on the field and also quite important for the safety of the players. So that's my run through of the changes we're making. Happy to answer questions after we get through this if there are any. Regarding the access off of Rose Avenue, this was the previous view which we had provided looking up Rose towards the back of the dugout. And you can see the walk carries on down off the page, and it's disconnected from the lower bullpen area. The updated image, and please excuse, the perspective is a bit different. That's one of the responses that we adjusted for was there was a request that we adjust the images view perspective. So the sidewalk is now shortened. It stops here, and we have the perimeter fencing coming around. And then you can see here there will be a ramp system so that we can bring folks down to the bullpens as quickly as possible. And then the fencing with the gate here will enable Iona to better control the flow so that folks won't be able to drop players and spectators off here. If it does become an issue, this gate can be controlled. These next images were in the submission before, so it's a bit of a refresher. We did note one of the comments pertained to these trees, one of the recent comments from just the other day, that the trees are planted on the ledge. We do recognize that that's not possible. When we do these plans, we show them, and there's ledge involved, we show the trees kind of as close to where we want them as possible, and then when we're in the field with the contractors, we get them as close as we can. And that way we can get the tree placement as best suited to what the village is asking for as possible. So that's why we're showing this. This is a view looking down White Plains. So you can see the existing sign and the existing stone wall, which would be remaining. This is the view from the Stein Hall looking back towards the field. So you can see there is some existing shrubs in that area. It's a bit of a naturalized area. So whatever of that we can preserve, we will preserve. So that's reflected here, as well as some evergreen plantings, which will get taller to better screen that amenity. Moving into lighting, we had discussed before that we were going to look for alternatives to spotlights, and I'm pleased to say that we were successful. Luckily, this is the one that I really want you to see, so that one's visible. So we selected a wedge feature so that it will mount flat against the building. It will not be adjustable so that no one can decide that they want to point it up to shine somewhere else. Not an option with this. And it comes in 2 sizes, and we will be utilizing both of the sizes. The larger will be utilized along the Meyer Center to light this path, and behind the dugouts to light those stairs and the landings at the ends of the dugouts. There will also be some that are put on the press box itself, and one to either side, small ones to either side above the door, so that when people leave the press box in the evening, the landing is well lit, so that we don't have a trip hazard. Now, it looks like a lot of lights, and I am sensitive to that. We are sensitive to that. The approach we were taking here was that if we had more lights, but they were dimmer and better controlled, that the overall effect would be more of a glow and an ambiance as opposed to a spotlight. So that's the intent here. That's why you're seeing actually more than we had shown before. It's because we adjusted. the fixture to have a better or less visible impact. So the speakers, I know the PA system is something that's gotten quite a bit of attention. We are proposing to locate speakers for the PA system only at the seating area. And we did have the sound study performed to determine where it would be best to put these and our best approach. And similar to the lighting, the assessment concluded that the best way that we could get effective speakers without projecting beyond our site was to have more quieter speakers. So similar to when you're in an auditorium, you don't want one speaker in the center of the auditorium blasting at everybody. The good ones have speakers strategically placed around the seating area so that you get the noise coming from a few different places, but it's quieter, so it's more comfortable. So this is showing 5 speakers. They'll be mounted on these 2 poles, and you can see in this cross-section that they will be directed downwards towards the seating. These speakers are going to be what would typically be considered quiet for a ball field. When the crowd is cheering, if you have packed stands and someone hits a home run and they cheer, you won't be able to hear the PA system. It will be drowned out. So the intent here and what has been calculated is that by the time you get to the nearest residential properties, the noise coming from the PA system will be background noise, similar to a lawnmower a couple houses down. You'll be able to hear it. If you can tell that someone's speaking, it would be muffled, so it's not going to be a really loud and aggressive sound once we're off the site. So again, we can come back to that with questions later on. For the site planting, not a lot has changed, quite frankly. We are showing there are some existing trees between the existing tennis courts and Rose Avenue. These are not new, they're existing to remain. We're going to keep as many of those as we can, and we believe that they will all be just fine. We are adding more screening behind the batter's eye and at the parking area to better soften that edge for the view from White Plains. For circulation, again, this has not changed significantly. I do want to reiterate, this is, we are providing a double gate that is both for maintenance and for emergency vehicle access to the field. So it is proximate to the infield, easily accessed from Rose Avenue, and we will maintain open access between those gates and Rose Avenue. That just flew by. We almost passed all the fun stuff. Okay. The other bit about circulation, we did receive a comment asking about if the food truck is parked at the end of the parking area, as we had indicated, would fire apparatus be able to get by? Specifically emergency vehicles, but the aerial fire apparatus are really the ones that have trouble maneuvering. So that's what we did, just a quick turn study that shows that with the food truck parked at the end here, so you still have open access to the softball field, the vehicle parking areas are all still clear, and the fire truck will be able to maneuver its way down Edgewood Lane. And just, I found that some thought it was wonderful. Iona has a specific food truck, so it'll be a nice food truck even. So that about sums it up for some of the kind of big picture design changes and some of the responses we had that we specifically wanted to address in this presentation. The big item, of course, being drainage. So Mike, would you like to take it away?
Sure. Good evening. Mike Tucker from Langen Engineering. We have been doing the stormwater management design. Based on some concerns we heard at the last meeting and in working with the village's consulting engineer, we've made some updates to this plan. The original plan included the drainage system for the upgraded baseball field and that infiltration system that's circled in green there that Cindy is highlighting. And then it basically went off, tied into the existing system roughly where that blue circle is, and continued down towards Crawford Street. We were at the time reducing the runoff from the baseball field, and therefore the entire site runoff was being reduced. Based on those concerns that we heard, we are now adding an additional underground detention system under the baseball field, or under the tennis courts, I'm sorry. We had looked at originally having a surface basin kind of beyond the softball field, but given some groundwater elevation issues and trying to preserve the open space on that corner of the site, we decided that putting something underground under the tennis courts was the best option. So what this allowed us to do is capture the runoff, not only from the baseball field, but from the tennis courts, the parking lot, that entire parking lot, and the buildings. So all of the runoff from basically the entire impervious area from this part of campus is now being controlled either through the infiltration system at the baseball field or the detention system under the tennis courts. So this has allowed us to significantly reduce the runoff, not just from the baseball field, but from that entire part of campus.
Can you give us a sense of scale of the infiltration system?
Well, the infiltration system under the baseball field is the same as it was previously. The new one is roughly the size of a tennis court underground because it fits. It's 4 feet deep. So they're like cube units, like HDPE units that are strictly just volume control. It's just a volume. So we had originally wanted to make that an infiltration system as well to, enhance the recharge, but the soil testing showed that groundwater just wasn't deep enough there to provide that separation. So, so if you want to flip back to it. So this just gives you an idea. It's probably not legible from the whole room, but the blue bars are existing runoff from the site for the top one is the 1-year storm, the middle one's the 10-year storm, and the bottom one's the 100-year storm. So on average, we're reducing the runoff from the site by about 70% to Crawford Ave. So that we've done a significant improvement by adding this detention, and we think there will be a big benefit to the existing system on Crawford Ave and to the village there.
Have you had a chance to see what the village is planning on doing at Crawford? I don't know if you've had a chance to.
We've talked to your village engineers about it a bit, but don't have the significant details on it. We were only focused on what we could control on our site at this point.
We're going to get to the public comment. We hear you. Public comment, but I think you can see why we're asking the questions. Buildings undertaking significant improvements to drainage, or let's say down.
Okay.
Crawford, and so we like to think about this in terms of, benefiting the neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And I guess the point I was trying to make was that what we're proposing here is more than just a benefit to the college, but it is a benefit to the downstream system because the flows are being significantly reduced from what we can control to that system.
Can you talk a little bit about how, obviously you get a sleeve of rain to go through your system into those yellow holding tank underneath the test.
Correct.
And then it will slowly, at some point, flow out.
Yes. Yes.
When it's less.
Yeah. So there's an outlet control structure that has a weir in it. So it allows that system to fill up and then will slowly spill over. It's hard to explain, but think of it as like a bathtub. So you fill a bathtub up really quickly. Sometimes if you're filling it up really quickly and you're draining it, it still fills up. So it's similar to that. So if a big storm comes, it's filling up, some water's coming out, but at a much slower rate than would be coming out if it was just a huge hole in the bottom of your bathtub.
So it doesn't go and monitor the downstream Crawford area. It's still really in bad shape. It will wait or it will just.
No,
It's not that sophisticated.
it's not that sophisticated. That's something, that it's designed to that volume basically was designed so that when 100-year storm hits, which supposedly once every 100 years, but we know that being may not be the case these days, it will hold that much volume basically while letting a little bit out. But it's not necessarily controlled by what's going on further downstream offsite.
If you get a big enough storm, that does still, you're better off.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand your question.
Big enough storm, you'll, but you're still better off downstream for having this.
Exactly, yes, yeah, because otherwise that whole storm event will just be coming out. So we'll be holding a pretty significant volume of runoff in that case. And at the same time, some of the runoff in the baseball field is being infiltrated, is being recharged back into the ground. So, from the what? Yes. Yes, so there's an outlet control system on the baseball field that handles the runoff from the baseball field and allows some water to come out at a lesser rate than runs off the baseball field today. Then we pick up the roof runoff in the tennis courts as it heads to that underground detention system. And that's held there and controlled by that outlet control structure.
Are either of the infiltration systems picking up any of the runoff water from the parking lot? Or is the parking lot just going straight into the
The parking lot is where that blue dot is now. That's the downstream manhole catch basin from the parking lot. We are picking that up and sending it to that.
So it's flowing north.
It flows directly to Crawford now. Now it's flowing to the new system in the tennis courts. Correct. So we are picking up the runoff from all of the impervious area on this site. So all the rooftops, all the tennis courts, the baseball field, and the parking lots.
Is all the flow due to gravity or due to pumps?
It's all gravity. It all grade basically go from left to right across the page, drops down towards Crawford. Straight, that line right there that Cindy is highlighting, it goes straight to Crawford now. Yep. Correct.
So just to be very clear, the G parking lot, can you highlight the G parking lot on the diagram? Yeah, so water gets there, where does that go?
There's a series of catch basins and piping that now flows straight to Crawford. Now we're picking it up, and that new pipe that you see, that dark line, is all new piping that's sending it to the new detention system.
So the detention system in the top right corner, it doesn't go to the
Yes.
baseball.
No, it does not. No, the baseball field one is picking up the baseball field and sidewalks and dugout areas around the baseball field. You're welcome.
We have one big step to make. Thank you. Appreciate your time and attention and welcome any questions or further discussion.
Yeah, I'll start with parking, which we're not addressing here. You know, yes, a little frustrating with the parking study and trying to have that sort of part of the record for this meeting. Was there something that held that back?
The big part of redoing the parking study was to do another count on a weekend. We did a Friday, Saturday count, but there was a bunch of holidays early in the month, which we didn't want to count on. So we counted, I believe it was the 3rd and 4th or 4th and 5th of October and updated the parking study.
Holidays, it just means that, you know, we'll have to put this over meet.
Yep, and then,
Appreciate all the work that's been done, each meeting that was helpful, and better understanding.
oh, understood. And the results of the parking study didn't change. You know, we did count higher numbers that weekend, but there's still a lot of extra parking in and around the field to handle the expected spectators for the baseball field.
Okay, so will we have our consultants with that?
Yep,
study?
yep.
They will help advise us, but I know one question that's come up from the departments is there's sort of current level of occupancy of this campus now, and maybe a higher level of occupancy from this campus in the future. I don't know if that's something anyone who's here from Iona could speak to, or will dive into it when we get to that once we have the parking study, but our understanding is Iona campus currently isn't fully occupied, and just understanding that has some implications on the potential. Care to speak to that, and we can address that at the next meeting?
Are you talking about greater amount of use of parking this area or in the main campus?
It all sort of connects because there are only so many spots in the overall footprint.
If you're concerned with the use of the main campus, still go across from the beach, starts.
Right, at a certain point it's functional, so I think just understanding if there is any knowledge, future occupancy, or current occupancy.
Hi, Mike Smirglio, Senior VP of Facilities Operations at Iona. Our plans change quite often. As you may know, we opened up Boehm Hall to students as a dorm. So we are currently housing 42 students there. Students do go back and forth with shuttles that leave every half hour on the dot. It's just a round trip to New Rochelle and back. We have 2 shuttle systems that do that. Our club sports players come to the site in shuttles as well. Our Health Science Center is doing well. The programs are robust, and we are targeting additional programs to be handled, but we have buildings on site that we currently have no plans to use at this point. But that being said, we're in a lot of buildings on the site right now. So there is 1.5 buildings that we're not using.
Any other questions from the facilities?
Typically, no current plans for this area, other than the one we've heard about the softball field, for example.
We don't have plans to renovate the softball field. Of course, by virtue of our drainage system, we will renovate the tennis courts. We do have a minor plan to do a facelift on the interior of the building, but it doesn't add any more occupancy. As a matter of fact, we decreased occupancy in March in that building with the expiration of the lease of our tennis company that's there.
Someone talked about the netting and creation of 40-foot height. And what concerns, if a ball, my ball went over the netting, other than 5 foot.
So it would, if a ball were to make it over the net, it would go over into White Plains Road, we would imagine. However, what I have to say is that Cindy mentioned before that we want to level out the field. So we're sinking that field down 8 feet, and then that net comes up on top of the current grade. It will be, Cindy, correct me if I'm wrong, 40 feet above the wall.
Sorry to correct you.
No, that's fine.
It will be approximately 40 feet above field elevation. I would like to point out that a home run ball is at 30 feet, and we are going to have the outfield fencing, netting be stopping at 30 feet, and then an additional 10 feet of safety netting will be on top of that. So there'll be a little more give in the safety netting and it will drop straight down. So the likelihood of having a large quantity going over the netting is significantly reduced from the current situation where there's only a 20-foot netting along part of the outfield. So we are greatly enhancing the safety in terms of providing more appropriate netting for this field.
Sorry, can you help me clarify, what are the different types of netting? Is it 30-foot net and there's another 10 on top of it?
Yes, it will be the same safety netting, but the outfield netting will be the lower 30 feet. So basically, if a ball hits that, it will bounce back a little bit and it will still be in play. Like at Fenway, exactly, yes. The top 10 feet we're providing only for safety reasons to catch anything that's above that would be considered a home run so that we can catch the majority of those, which will be most of the balls that have a chance of getting out.
So if you get a ball from the wall of the outfield, it's not a home run. Let's say it goes 30.
That's my non-baseball expert understanding.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So it's like the green monster goes at 30.
How many feet to right field ball?
301.
301. Yes.
And exactly.
Yeah,
Uh,
you say it's a little ball.
The Green Monster is 319 feet away.
You could go on
310?
Is there a study done with 30 feet and additional 10 feet?
Fair question. We did not perform a specific study for this project. We did consult with the vendor of the netting to get their expertise on what they typically see, what they would recommend for this situation, so that we could get a good understanding of kind of what are the best practices in the field. We also have a few people in my office at the SLAM Collaborative who work a lot with athletic facilities, and they were also very comfortable with this as a kind of typical situation and a good safety measure.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And currently you said it's 20 feet.
Yes.
How many balls go over the 20? Have there been any accidents, incidents?
I have not counted, and I cannot speak to the local 911 calls regarding baseball injuries. Hopefully none.
The question you lately all this is, would there be engineering or aesthetic issues if you went high? Imagine both.
So there are engineering challenges, yes. Aesthetically, these fences and netting systems, they do tend to disappear. Just because, as you can see in this image, the black netting, it becomes quite transparent. However, the columns which support it, the taller they get, the bigger they get. So that's going to just get bigger and bigger, the diameters. What I don't know is at what height you would need to bring the columns even closer together and start doing cross bracing. So if you go too much higher, you know, that's like the engineering. It's going to become a bit more complicated. We did feel that with this as a more typical height, it's well engineered and it does still disappear for the most part so that it's not an eyesore to the community.
And if you go to the outfield, right field, straight across 22, you would essentially on a campus, right? Or that one of the quote unquote residential.
There are also some houses on Boulevard, which goes up an inch. Those are houses on Boulevard, so the lower ones aren't, but they're private ones.
Right. And I
So
think,
if we want to be very specific, it's going to land on the fence between the properties.
and, but if you, the first house on, we'll get to the public.
Thank you.
You get to about 360 feet, get across. Right?
accommodation, sure. But you told me, that first house on the floor, if you go beyond that house, you probably have a problem, right? Just one crazy question. Field is currently 40 feet.
It is, yes.
Could be oriented with balls.
We did, it's a crazy question, yes, but we appreciate it. We actually looked at that as well. For the field to function, and, no, for the field to function, no. We are really adjusting it. We actually moved it further from White Plains Road as part of this. Not a huge amount, but we were able to get maybe 5-6 feet further away. But you can see that we're needing to kind of take in the side. Yeah, so we're getting pretty tight, and this angle is a little bit foreshortened along here instead of going as wide as we would typically like. So we did try several configurations. We wanted to get the best configuration for the players and for the neighborhood, and they had the configuration right in the first one. They just forgot to flatten the field.
So going back to the value,
Yes,
it's better than what is currently there,
yes,
but it is not best. It's possible because it involves, you keep saying the majority of balls.
I do. Yep. I would, so I'm not a baseball expert, contrary to this plan. There's always a chance that a ball can get over a fence or safety netting. Yeah, exactly. In Dunkin' Donuts Park, they have balls that end up outside of the park. Yes. Are you asking my knowledge of the safety, or are you asking?
More knowledge.
We purchased the campus in 2022. We haven't any knowledge of it since then, of there being a safety issue. We don't have information. We've actually asked, and we just don't have any information, but it may not exist. So we're just not familiar with it. We have asked, we did want to have that information available, but we just don't have any. And again, the field is being used now. It has been used over the last 3 years. Now, this will be a little bit different, but it's the same use. And, again, legal niceties, from the standpoint of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, we are improving the situation at any impacts that we are creating with respect to this identical use. So from a legal standpoint, we've more than met it. It's the same with the stormwater. We are much more, we are improving it well beyond the legal obligation of treating the changes that we've made and the impacts that are created through our proposal and significantly impacting it and changing it to the improvement from the status quo. And that's well beyond the legal requirement. But we're happy to do it.
We've met now, sorry.
And the players have been substantially changed from recording players versus.
And I was actually joking with Mike this morning, if anybody hits it over that fence under the new NIL rules, somebody's going to buy that player and take him away from Iona. They're not going to let him play there. That's a fact of life. So sorry, Mike, but that's the way it works now.
301 feet.
301. Then there's some room between, from the right of way, between the fence and the street has to be a minimum 50 feet across. That's the state road. My guess is we can go, it's probably more, and then to the other side. So it's, certainly, no question. I think in fact, that's probably the more reasonable expectation of where there could be a problem. Because again, by the time it would get across the street, it will have landed, it will have lost most of its velocity, et cetera. So, yes. It can, certainly. And as we said, and again, to stress, and then it's common sense. It has happened, and I'm sure it's happening, but if it was happening all the time, I'm sure we all would have heard about it. It's just not something that's happening all the time. And I'll also mention again, we're talking about 20 games a year. I mean, it's practice, but we're talking 20 games a year.
Make sure we keep the fencing issue in ground. Can you just go over for me what the existing fencing is around the field and what the new fencing will be, to understand where you added?
Yes, I'm pondering what would be if there's an effective graphic. I go. So the existing 20-foot fence is along the outfield. You are seeing the outfield fence as well, which is a more typical 6 to 8 foot chain link with the topper on it. And then there's the taller 20 foot along that field. It does not extend along Rose Avenue. The perimeter fence does, a shorter chain link, but the safety netting does not. 5 to 6, yes, I believe. It may have some taller sections through here that I wasn't able to see with the vegetation. Yes.
How does this compare, maybe you don't know the answer, but how does this compare to what's on the school?
I don't know the answer to that. And we don't have study information about that other system. I did actually ask the sound engineer if he could provide any thoughts on that, and he said he couldn't provide anything reliable without having to study whatever study they did for their system.
So you're saying here, the number of speakers, because they're more localized, public areas, it will not carry that far.
Yes, that is the design.
Versus just one big speaker.
Exactly.
Blasting out. We had homecoming last weekend in Brownsville, and I live about 2 blocks north of the school, and I could hear the announcer and everything. That would not be the case with the sound system here.
That would not be the case with this sound system.
It was pretty impressive.
I'm getting that impression. So there are a couple of things that our sound study engineers recommended. Part of the design of this is you'll see the speakers are actually a decent sized speaker. That's because with a larger speaker, you get the better technology and voice clarity so that you don't have to be as loud for people to be able to understand you. That way they can keep it at that lower level. It's able to be understood close by, and it fades that much faster. So you don't end up with that staticky sound that they keep trying to up the volume so that people can hear because everyone's complaining. It's nice and clear so that it can be heard in the stands without it needing to be very loud.
The orientation of the field, good distance, points away from the university.
Yes, yeah. I would need to double check the map.
What was the
Would you
question?
like me to do so? I do have it. You can give me a moment. Yes, that was one of the monitoring stations, was at Stein Hall. I do not know of any height elevation change that was done in terms of placing the monitors, so we can get back to you on that and just confirm.
I have a question on the field itself. You said it's 20 days right here. Do you have any plans, events, or to roll out the field design? I don't know, local clubs or any baseball clubs in the area?
Mike, you can come up if you want. I mean, we do it on occasion. We've done it with the local community groups on a request. We did it with the Babe Ruth League. It has to be the older kids because of the size of it. And because it's a Division I field, we're not going to be using it regularly because we don't want it chewed up or whatever. But if there's a special circumstances that the high school wants to do some event or something, we would consider it if it's requested and the village doesn't have an objection. But it's not something we do regularly. No, again, this is to be utilized by at a top level of Division I, and we can't have it chewed up, and it's just not going to be something that's going to get rented out on for that kind of a use. It would have to be a special occasion.
Other questions, otherwise I'll ask our consultant about the review and feedback. You have some view from? Come on up. I know your review is not complete, but.
Try and be as loud as I can. Rick Bolander. Rick Bolander, KSCJ Consulting. I was more focused on the stormwater aspect of the project. And our ultimate goal with our latest round of comments that were, for the most part, addressed by the project engineer and the applicant was to mitigate runoff from the impervious areas that is now currently not being mitigated, which is, from the buildings, from the parking lots. So, I don't know if you recall back, the idea was floated about, you could see the grass area just to the east of the tennis courts. The idea was floated about some kind of stormwater detention pond in that area. The Iona crew was not too keen about that, but they ultimately accomplished that goal with what they are proposing underneath the tennis courts, collecting the majority, almost all of the impervious surfaces, again, on the Meyer Center, the parking lot, and then, proposing and designing that system under there, essentially creating a pond. We also asked that they improve the stormwater infrastructure in that area, the pipes and the inlets and the connections into Crawford Street. And full transparency, our office is also the engineer for Eastchester. So right now we are working diligently on stormwater improvements on Crawford. I've done the entire analysis of that area, and it's a large area. You're talking about 178, no worries, about 178 acres of drainage area going into the Crawford Street drainage structure, and then eventually through Siwanoy, and then under the Hutchinson River Parkway. So it's a vast area of drainage. So the ultimate goal was, obviously, we can only do what we can on the Iona site. So the ultimate goal, again, is to detain that stormwater. So you get a big storm and there's a big rush of water from that 178 acres going into that infrastructure on Crawford Street. What we wanted to do here is you get that big rush of water. We wanted to hold our water back on the owner property. And we are at the relatively top portion of that drainage area. So let's collect what we can, hold it back, let water from other areas pass through that system, and then we slowly release our water into the system. That was the ultimate goal. And I believe they've done a good job at accomplishing that. And I mean, there's still work to be done, but it's kind of just ironing out the design right now. And the ultimate design is in place, and now it's kind of just ironing out, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, essentially.
Is there also someone here from Colliers?
Yes, Pete Versillo, Colliers Engineering and Design. We took a look at the traffic and parking aspects of the project, and we did have some concerns with, well, I can address what I've reviewed to date, if you'd like. We can hesitate, and I can wait until after I review the latest document and come back next time. That's fine.
Yeah, my guess is that our next meeting will have our updated study. We'll have,
Yeah.
I think we also did sound work.
Yes, our firm also did some sound work.
Maybe you can touch on that.
That's not my expertise. That's a separate, sound is very different from traffic. Yes.
Appreciate you coming out.
Oh,
I think our-
that's-
our
that-
teams would rather have
That's fine.
their updated study, your reaction to that
Yeah.
updated study, and that way we're not going through it twice, if you're not.
That's fine. Thank you. Okay.
You did not receive this.
The planning board did not receive this? No, that's their response to the resubmission. We just received on Tuesday, we studied. We have not had a chance to review that as the new updated study.
But I think you were looking at the sound study.
Yes, it's only 2 pages.
Right, that's, I think that's.
Okay, but I am going to bring this up when I am allowed to. There are definitely issues with what we have.
All colleagues here. Right. All good. All right, so any questions for our outside consultant?
I'll just say a few words. Eric Dorsch from KSCJ Consulting. Just to be clear, Rick's also from KSCJ. He's the reviewing engineer, and I'm the reviewing planner. So we're looking at it from all different angles. So I just want to say, working with the applicant team has been great. They've responded very thoroughly to a lot of questions, and we've made some good progress. I would say that what's lacking is data that compares prior to proposed, the metrics to substantiate the proposed improvements in terms of planning, from a planning perspective for the record. I know it's been said that previous Concordia records and information have been hard to come by or scanned or not available. Such as sporting attendance, schedules of sports games, schedules of the tennis, schedules of the Meyer Athletic Center, just to understand the circulation and programming, the way it was run, essentially, the facility. And how do you, or if someone could, maybe if you don't have the metrics to speak to that, essentially, also a big gap is how the East Campus parking, I know we're not talking about parking, but the uses, the programmatic uses, the soccer program, the tennis program, the baseball program, the athletic center program. I think it's really important. A critical component of this is to see, or at least discuss or talk about how all of those program items will function together and allow for the design of the campus to function as intended and avoid any confusion with these overlapping uses or situations that you didn't plan for. So
Are you basically saying, you'd like to find out whether they're going to schedule tennis, soccer, and baseball?
yes,
At the same time?
yes, that's exactly one of the main points I'm trying to make. I'll cite an example of the resolution from the Village of Tuckahoe for the soccer field. They specify and cite the same amount of parking that that the baseball field renovation is citing. So essentially, they're both uses are saying they're utilizing the same amount of parking. And it is what it is. The campus is the size that it is. But what happens if a soccer game, championship game's going on at the same time as a championship baseball game? What do you do? How do you park that? How do you plan for it? Is there a management plan that goes into effect? We need to call the Bronxville PD and have them come put up cones to direct traffic. And, we have to make sure people are crossing the street safely. And to date, we haven't really seen much about that. And that would be very helpful. The applicant team has provided a lot of information and detail, and the stormwater improvements have been great to date. And really, it's moving along, but some of that information that I just mentioned has not been presented. And I think it's really important from a site planning perspective to understand previous conditions to proposed conditions. And in the event if there's any, sticks or spokes in the wheel, or a rock in the cog along the way, how do you deal with that? What's the plan, essentially, from a site campus planning perspective? I understand that for the soccer field, there is a plan in place for an officer to direct traffic on Rose Avenue for drop-off and the bus drop-off there. I just haven't seen any of that from the baseball program yet. And that was a big question that I had.
Thanks, that's helpful. It sounds like the issue for, getting to an integrated plan, the issue today, maybe also having both the back and the history of Concordia, so you can have a true comparison of three of those.
That's right.
But there still be some work to chop.
To be fair, there's no information available from Iowa, I'm sorry, Concordia.
That's exactly my point. I'm not quite clear as to what you would expect us to do. And with regard to the Concordia information, they're out of business. We don't have their information. I don't think it's published anywhere, so I'm not quite sure where it would get. And again, apologize for it, but to remind you, we are here to discuss the renovations to the baseball field and the impacts of the renovation to the baseball field. And while we are not preparing or requesting shared parking analysis, we are not suggesting that it has impacts. That we are providing the parking that's necessary for this use, which is a historical use and is not changing. We know the number of seats that are there. We've told you what our historical use is, and I'm not quite clear what other information is necessary in order to meet our legal obligation of what the information that you need to be able to do this. I appreciate that it would be nice to have it, but we don't have it and we can't supply it. So we would, like to move on from that. Thank you.
No, I would just say in that, to respond to that, just maybe some schedules then of some planned sports schedules of all the projected times and dates of an average schedule. So that could be just assessed.
With that, there aren't any other questions, let's open up the public meeting. Been waiting for us to get to them, and we appreciate that. So whoever would like to speak from the public, please come up to the line, identify yourself. We appreciate you. Your remarks, read about your neighbors also want to speak and complimentary points you want everyone to have.
Yes, hello, good evening. I'm Susan Salerno. I live on Orchard Place. which is about 2 blocks this side of 22, very near Concordia. And it also is about the midpoint between the Bronxville field and the, sorry, Iona field. Great points discussed today, great issues, some that I am also interested in. Let's start with noise levels. When there are games in the Bronxville fields, homecoming a few weeks ago, or any games, the noise carries all the way over to there. So it's not just, I can only imagine what it's like for people who live much closer, but the noise carries a lot. So hopefully the speaker systems will be much better, won't transmit the noise that quickly. And if in fact they are great, maybe we can implement them in the Bronxville as well. I know, okay, but just planting a seed. Perhaps, so this is not only when the weather's nice and we're outside in the garden, but even with the windows closed and doors closed, we can still hear it. And this is again, not across the street, but near what is now Iona. Somebody, if you can just elaborate, there was some mention about the sound level would be that of a lawnmower. I'm not quite sure, I missed that. So maybe, did somebody say something about a lawnmower? Yeah, you did. Which lawnmowers are quite loud. So maybe when I'm done, you can clarify that.
I can just,
Oh,
we're
sure.
gonna have our noise person here next time. We don't have the person here, so the people that are answering the questions
Oh,
are not
okay.
noise experts, but we're gonna be next.
This will not be last hour.
Okay.
My comment was anecdotal example based on my conversation with the group that did the study. So,
Right.
They will be able to speak more
Okay.
specifically.
Okay, because having something as quiet as a lawnmowers are very loud. The other thing is the lighting. There's a lot of concern about lighting, which is wonderful. And I've been in Bronxville for many, many decades, and it seems to me that perhaps every 5 years or so, there's a new proposal to add stadium lighting, whatever it's called, flood lighting to the fields in Bronxville. So every 5 years, 5, 6 years, 7 years, we go through this whole discussion. So I'm wondering if maybe there could be some sort of requirement or stipulation that no lighting will ever be discussed again, because it's kind of a waste of time and it never really wins. The third issue is parking. I know we're not discussing that today, but.
You're free to discuss it.
Oh, okay.
You're free to discuss it.
Great, thank you. As I said, I live on Orchard, which is Oriole and Greenfield and Tanglewild. And when Concordia was in operation, they had a lot of students parking on Oriole and Greenfield, and that was mitigated very nicely. Thank you very much. So there's no more parking on those residential streets. I'm hoping that whenever the parking study is done, they're not relying on or hoping to use the very quiet, peaceful residential streets for overflow parking. That would really be detrimental. So those are my 3 issues, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Whoever would like to go next.
Sorry. Can you hear me? My name is Nicole Darre.
Yeah, bend down.
Sure. My name is Nicole Darre-Carrer. I'm a resident, but I'm here really on behalf of my friend who lives much closer, will be impacted by this project. Just to say, I hear there's a lot of sentiments around this project. This is not the first public hearing that I've attended where I've heard the conversations. And I can say personally, I see that the board is asking the right questions. I commend the level of engagement. And I guess for the residents, we urge for independent studies just to verify all the claims so we can get to scientifically accurate answers around all these concerns. Now, I'm here to read a letter from Maria and Andre Sigorny, who could not be here today. They live in 182 White Plain Road. So it reads, "Good evening, Chairman Goldman and members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. We live immediately adjacent to Iona's Bronxville campus, and like many of our neighbors, we are deeply concerned about the safety and community impacts of this proposed Division I baseball facility. Baseballs are already flying out of the field today, landing in the streets, in driveways, and even in people's backyards. Iona has even posted a sign saying that they will not be responsible for any balls that cause injury or damage. That's not a solution. It's an admission that the site is unsafe. When the field upgrades to Division I play this spring, batted balls will reach speeds over 100 miles per hour and can travel more than 500 feet. No fence or net can safely contain that. I worry about my kids, my guests, that would be me, or any pedestrian being struck in their own yard or on the sidewalk. Beyond safety, the village's own consultant has identified serious deficiencies in Iona's filings, missing data on traffic, stormwater, and noise, and even at just 15% campus utilization, we already experience full parking lots and traffic jams on Rose Avenue and White Plain Road. If anything is approved, who will regulate the number of events, including rentals to outside organizations? How will the village ensure that each event complies with local noise, traffic, and crowd control laws? Iona is downplaying how many people will actually come to these games and how disruptive this will be to the entire village. Once built, the burden of enforcement will fall on our community. This community has spoken loudly. Over 800 residents have signed our petition asking for accountability, safety, and transparency before this project moves forward. We respectfully urge the board to pause any approvals, demand independent verification of all studies, and require Iona to demonstrate that this facility can operate safely and responsibly before anyone is put at risk. Thank you for your time and for protecting the safety and character of our village. Andre and Maria Sigourney, 37 North Road. Sorry, that's the actual address. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Check, 1, 2, 3. All right, I'm Michael Lander. I live at 2 Hobart Street, directly across from the field. I wrote a letter. I do regularly get balls in the backyard as long as I've lived there, which is 10 years now. 3 or 4 a year minimum, well into the yard.
Or do they roll in?
I don't know, they just appear, my dog eats them, chokes on them, et cetera. I would say, look, we don't know if anyone's been hurt since 1960. We don't know if anyone's been hurt since 1960. Sure, that's a nice legal argument to say, but that just means we've been lucky. What happens when a ball hits a car, spins off a tire? We just don't know when that's going to happen. D1 players hit with metal bats. They hit further than professional athletes who hit with wooden bats, 10 to 20% further. So an average player can almost be like a pro. Now the house across from me, now there's a house in, I want to call it Concordia, Iona. They have a 3.5-year-old there. I have a 4-year-old. They have a 3-year-old. So there's now another kid even closer to the line drive. Let me make sure I cover all this here. I'll be quick. I'm not going to kill everyone here. I would say, yeah, I couldn't find any other D1 fields in a neighborhood like this. I looked, I've researched. No, they're usually attached to college campuses. They probably have a field, I would imagine. So there's no other example in the country surrounded by houses where people have yards and kids and cars driving by in close proximity. This isn't about being anti-college or anti-sports. I mean, I certainly didn't move to Bronxville to live across the street from a D1 stadium. I won't try not to talk about noise, but it is noisy. I don't mind the sound of baseball. It's nice on the weekends, kind of hear everyone cheering, but it does not need a PA system to be heard loud and clear in my backyard, that's for sure. And I would say we've been lucky so far. Let's not rely on luck to protect our kids. And someone said this kind of nicely. It's like, who does this benefit? How does this help our community? I don't see who it helps but Iona College. It doesn't help anyone else who lives here as far as I'm concerned. So please do not approve this design. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that seems to work better.
Hi, everyone. You can hear me? So my name is Neve Hartnett-Merluccio. I'm a resident of Bronxville for over 27 years, and my oldest son attends the nursing program at Iona University here in the Bronxville Health and Science campus. And I am just so thrilled to have Iona in our community. I can't say enough good things about them. I think it's great that we have a great school here. We have great colleges. We've got Sarah Lawrence. We've got Iona. This is like a win-win for everyone. And I think this is the first time I've seen this today, and I'm just so impressed. Look, all I can say is just that, Iona, along with New York Presbyterian, have invested heavily in our facilities and infrastructure. And, this property could easily have been bought up by developers when it came up for sale. And, thankfully, Iona is the ones that bought it. I can only imagine what we would have had to deal with here otherwise. And I think any investment in our green spaces, and obviously we do have to address the concerns of the residents within a reasonable manner. But, I would support this. And I think that the board here has done a great job. And, I just think that, Iona is on an upward trajectory in their rankings, and we should be supporting them in having a baseball field of this quality. And it's so great to have D1 players, and I hope to go to these games and watch them with my kids. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
How you doing? Bill Carney, 101 Middleton Place. If you look at the map, my house is basically right where that red dot is.
Which red dot?
The red dot by the softball field. Yep, right there.
Gotcha.
You were just in my front yard. So I've lived there for 20 years. And fundamentally, I have no issues with Iona renovating the field. I think it'll be done nice. I think it'll be additive to the neighborhood. I just want to make sure it's done responsibly. I'm thrilled that they are including the drainage plan, because that was one of my major concerns. I think somebody here said, before, where does the water wind up now? It winds up in my front yard. So it's great that they're doing it. I just am a little skeptical because we have, I've dealt with more 100-year storms in the last 20 years than I care to remember. So I just really encourage you, because we're only going to get one shot at this, right? So I know Bronxville started on Tuesday taking down the dog park, and they're working on that. I just want to make sure that this is done. Like I said, we're getting one shot. So I'm just a little skeptical, because coming from the parking lot, it's going to have to make a left and go uphill to the tennis courts. So I just want to make sure whatever catch basin they're putting at the bottom of that parking lot is big enough to handle all of the water, because it's like Niagara Falls when there's a heavy storm. So if there's just one little sewer drain, it's not going to catch everything. It may catch some of it, but it's not going to catch everything. And when they turfed the soccer field, it was a big debate about the stormwater retention, and they were going to collect all the water. They put that in, and then it actually got worse because they were directing 100% of that stormwater into the Crawford system. So I'm not an engineer. I would love to see, look at the plans more deeply. So if we do have access to that, I would love it. But I really just encourage you all to really dig in and, make sure that what they're putting in is going to be, acceptable to what we've seen there. The second area is parking. Since they put the turf field in, the parking there has definitely gotten worse. When it was approved at Tuckahoe, Iona had said, because people brought up the parking issue, Iona had said that they would have 2 attendants at every event there. That was, 4 or 5 years ago. That has not happened. There's double parking there constantly when there are games. So we can't really allow Iona to police themselves. The field is not a public park. It's not going to be accessed by the neighbors. It is strictly going to be used by or rented out by Iona. So really, they should maintain the burden of the parking and the issues there. They mentioned that they were going to move up the sidewalk and the gate on Rose. There really is no good reason to have an entrance on Rose. As I mentioned, it's not a neighborhood park. Nobody in the community is going to access it. It's going to be all Iona folks. So, if you do put an entrance on Rose, all it's going to do is encourage people to drop off, pick up, double park, put their blinkers on, and it's a kind of narrow street. So it happens all the time now. If people double park there, they put their hazards on, they're parking on the grass. So no one's given me a good reason why there should be access there. The only access that really should be, it should be on Iona's campus. There are 140 parking spots behind the left field wall there. They're putting a walkway in to access it. Like, that should be where people should be directed to park. They should be directed, come off 22, park in that parking lot, and then leave going through 22. Rose Avenue should not bear the burden of the people going here. And I know their attorney said that they're, just improving what's there. They are fundamentally changing it. I mean, there is not a press box. They're putting seating in for 150, I believe. Currently, it seats about 12 people. So while they may be improving it, they are kind of fundamentally changing, the access to it. So again, I just don't feel like the neighborhood should bear the burden of all of the traffic that potentially could come, and that will be encouraged by having a gate there on Rose. So I just encourage you to shut that access off and just have the only access be on Iona's campus. Thank you.
Good evening, Glenn Cassis. I'm actually Bill's neighbor, and if in the spirit of neighborliness, I can make the comments here. You give me a mic, I'm going to move a little bit. It makes it easier, sorry. So I live at 33 Rose Ave, which is this house right here, just for reference. The water currently will flow from that parking lot down at the south end of the facility into those homes on North Ave. So I certainly have a lot of respect and admiration for the fact that the water is now being directed away from that. But Cindy, I'm sorry, do you mind, could you go to the water remediation plan, please? That page. I just want to point out the fact, as Bill was saying, this is basically moving the water back north, and I can't help but being a little bit cynical. You'll notice that they're not actually using both tennis courts entirely. You notice how there's that little notch at the top right side. The reason for that, I can only assume, is that dotted line is the Bronxville-Eastchester town line. And if they were to go over that line, probably they're doing another set of meetings with another town board. So I can't help but be a little bit skeptical that that's a very intentional choice. And given the fact that, as was noted by Rick, the remediation plan for Rose and Crawford hasn't been determined yet, or at least hasn't been approved yet. It's moving all of that water away from the homes on North, which is a great thing, but it's sticking it right there at the corner of Rose and Crawford, right in front of Bill's home, right in front of my home, and basically leaving it there. And that low point where the egress from that catch basin is on the Crawford, that's the low point for the entire area. That spot right there where it crosses onto Crawford is the low point for everything, where it floods first. So I just think it's really important to understand, again, in the spirit of neighborliness here, Eastchester and Bronxville are participating together to drain the dog park, which I think is a wonderful thing. It's great to move the water from the neighborhood, but until we're moving the water from this entire area, you're really, frankly, transferring risk from Bronxville onto Eastchester residents, which is a little bit frustrating as currently stands. I also just want to note one last thing on traffic, because it hasn't been said yet. That Rose corridor and the Crawford corridor is where all of the school buses go for Cottle Elementary School. So when we talk about traffic along Rose in particular, and Bill mentioned, there's no need to have a gate there, especially now because the tennis facility, which was public, is being closed in March, right? So that's now all Iona property. Any traffic buildup on Rose, if you're talking about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's school time. So all the buses for our district need to go back and forth out of there. And so I'd really appreciate any consideration when we get to the traffic components to just think about that piece too. Thank you.
Thank you. Feel free to use either microphone.
I'll use the one that works for that you hear me. Hi, my name is Carolyn Moriarty, and my husband Don and I have lived at 44 Edgewood Lane for more than 30 years and raised both of our children here. So I'm also a board member of the Concordia Conservatory, so I have that hat on too. What I'm hearing consistently tonight to almost every question is, We don't have the study yet on that. We don't have the data yet on that. Speaking from my own perspective, I don't think that we can decide anything until we have all the information. I know that every time we move a door in our house, we go through the village for 6 months to get the proper permits. We're rule followers. And one of the things that makes Bronxville such a great community is that we're all rule followers. We all work together. I would never do anything in my neighborhood that would disturb one of my neighbors. And I think that this Iona University project is all about Iona, and there's absolutely no consideration of the neighbors. And I'm just going to pick one specific. We could talk about the parking study, which we haven't seen. We could talk about any aspect, the lighting, I haven't seen enough detail. But the specific issue that is concerning me the most is the sound analysis that we requested at the last board meeting. The community very specifically asked for a comprehensive sound analysis. And what we got, and I'm sure most of you have seen this, it was a 2-page summary from Colliers, essentially pointing out what had been done wrong on the limited, I think it was a 3-day study, because they said the battery kicked out, and it was done on August 15th. Now, August 15th, I think a campus is in full operation on August 15th. They also did different sound levels. Every study I read said that the greatest noise is at the second level of the homes because it rises up and goes in the windows. The study was only done on the ground level and geographically left out Edgewood Lane and the intersection of Route 22 and Rose Avenue. So I ask you, intelligent planning board people, what is the use of a study that is too short a time, geographically inaccurate, and came to the grand conclusion that they anticipated 40 level decibels? No proof. They anticipated that. I mean, you're all intelligent people. I'm appealing to your intelligence. Question this, question the motives, hire experts that are not financially connected to the project. I won't use the word conflict of interest, but one could consider that. And I think that it puts Bronxville Village in a very vulnerable position to just assume that these things are going to be done the way we were told. I was told 3 years ago that there were only going to be graduate students on campus. Now we have freshmen, sophomores. If they don't get parking permits, they're going to park on the street. There can't be any off-street parking, and we have to put that in the parking study. Put the onus on Iona. It's their project, but you can control all of our destiny. And if you believe in the Bronxville community as profoundly as I do, that's what you will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? Jim divorced up at 45 North Road, so neighbors to a bunch of people that have spoken. And listen,
45 which? I'm
45 North, so we are like
Thank you.
basically a center field from the softball field. So if one side of Niagara Falls is Canada, we're the U.S. So we get a lot of flow down there of water, and like I think a lot what I'm hearing tonight is just a lack of coordination. You know, myself and our neighbors have spent the better part of the last 24 months working with the town of Bronxville to enact the Crawford drainage plan, and it's going forward. Amazing. It's going to be great for the community. But if there's not a coordination of what Iona's doing here with that program or that renovation or that project combined with what Eastchester's doing, you know, what are we really talking about? Like I look at these studies, and I'm not an engineer, and I can't tell you which way the water will flow. It'll flow up, it'll flow down, how much these catch basins are going to help. But like from my limited experience, catch basins they're like somebody said a bathtub, and that's what they are, right? They fill up and they dump out. So it would be nice to have one of our engineers, AJ or someone like that, take a look and see, you know, where the water is currently flowing, where this will change the water to flow, and how many gallons it will actually mitigate. Because my sense is it's less than any of us listening at 70% think it's going to be. So I really think, and you look back to the work that was done on the soccer field, and somebody mentioned it before, that was supposed to mitigate flooding. It's been an epic disaster. I mean, anyone that drives down rows, when there is a large storm, sees the, stormwater coming from the ground, 4 or 5 feet of standing water. So how does this interact with that water, and where's that all going? So I think one of the suggestions was to use the softball field as either like a retaining pond or something like that. And the response in Iona's response was, we're not going to do that. So I don't know why that's not an option, because, keeping that as green space, making it a retaining pond would help everyone in the area, to really no detriment, at least that I can think of, and probably not that much of an additional cost. So I really think we need to be coordinated. I mean, from my perspective, I'm happy to see a nice renovation to the baseball field. Be happy to take my kids to watch games, but just want to make sure it's done in a manner that doesn't increase something that we're all trying to mitigate at the moment, and that is the flooding. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Take your time.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shayna DeVorstep. I'm Jim's wife. He forgot one thing, so typical Jim. I just, after listening tonight, one thing I just came to mind, and I know tonight was not about talking about the parking and the traffic, but my kids did go to Chapel School, which is on that map. I think we all know it shares the parking lot, and there are times during drop-off and pickup that the traffic does line up on Route 22. So just something, to be aware of and to keep in consideration. If you have a game starting at 2 and there's young kids coming out to get into their cars, it's probably not going to be, the safest idea. So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Could I ask you a question?
The question is for them.
Yeah. What time is drop off and pickup at the Chapel School?
It depends on the day, and it depends on the age of your child. So
If we can get you to the mic for 1 second, just
yes.
for all those people watching.
Yeah, this
for all
one's
those
probably the
people
best.
Watching at home.
It depends on the age of your child. So, I think the younger kids are probably the ones that we have the most concern with. The 2s, I think they get out at 11:15, but I know when my kids were in the 4s, they get out at 2:15. And so that's when you get the lineup, because what they do is it's similar to Bronxville, where the kid will, they bring them to the car, and then if the parents parked, they have to go walk their kid to the parked car and whatnot. So just something to keep in mind. And then if it's a half day, it could be, 11:30.
But your concern is with the later one, 2:15, because that's more likely to overlap.
The 2:15 on a regular basis is when it backs up on 22. Correct. Yes.
Appreciate that.
Sorry, that was a long answer.
Quick question while we're at this for the Iona folks. Is the Chapel School is independent and has nothing to do with Iona, is that correct? Thank you. It's not on your property. Thank you.
And do you have to, this is a stupid question for anybody who lives in that area, so I apologize, but do you have to go through the facility parking to get to the Chapel School? Is there that overlap?
My kids went there too. I can answer this question. So no, you actually enter the Chapel School just below that line, but then to exit the parking lot, you have to loop back through the Iona lot that's pictured here, or you can turn right onto North
Is
Avenue.
it kind of a one-way loop? Is that?
Yeah, so you go in, it's a one-way road into the church
then
/ chapel
exit.
school, and
That
then
way
you
you
can
have flow.
split either going right to north, which is down on the picture here, or left and back around through the Iona lot back to Route
So
22.
one down, 2 out.
Yeah, most people, well, I'd say most people, many people turn left, because if you're going anywhere north or back towards Bronxville, Eastchester, whatever, that's going to be the logical way out.
So it's not a parking issue, it's a congestion issue.
Yeah.
And does the Chapel School have any effort made to direct traffic, or do you just left to your own devices? I guess I can't really ask that because they're not here. Okay.
I think there was still someone else from the public, or, yeah, please.
see if this works. Okay. Hi, I'm Erin Seifert. Actually, the talking of the driveway is perfect because if you were to follow out from Chapel to the right, you would get to North Road. My house is two doors down from that. So if you go from the proposed baseball field over Stein Hall to Chapel, you basically hit my house, along with the Moriartys and a number of other people. So Maya Angelou once said, when somebody shows you who they are, you should trust them. And I think trust has a lot to do with this. Somebody mentioned the parking situation. You can go by, despite the promises, for example, that there would be somebody to help make sure and manage the soccer parking. That hasn't happened. When we talk about the sense of community that Iona says that they want to have, if you take a look at the more than 400 pages of resubmission, there's actually a conservatory, a music school, a nursery school, an elementary. That's nowhere in any of their discussions of anything. And the reason I think that's important is when you talk about lighting and noise, those are the two areas that will be impacted so significantly. And all due respect to council who's saying that historical use isn't changing, it is, because you're trying to get a new athletic league to be able to participate in that. And so you may be thinking you're improving the situation for Iona, but you're not for the neighbors who are there. When we think about trust, the Iona president publicly said, and I quote, "Contrary to false information spread online about this project, lights are not and have never been part of the baseball field renovation." But yet we know that it is, even from today's presentation. For example, quote, "Two of the existing pole lights near the tennis court will be replaced with new pole lights to meet the campus standard. These are decorative acorn features, etc." So these are new features, new mounting heights, and new illumination characteristics that otherwise aren't even being discussed. Even here today, we heard about wedge lights, but we didn't hear about any of that. There's a music school that's literally on the other side of this field. But baseball, we talked a lot about netting. That's great. How about balls going into the school? The scoreboard on the picture that they show theoretically would be blocking light into that school. And when you're talking about the PA system, it was designed for amplified speech and intermittent music during games. And so while they're saying the off-light sound will remain below 40 dBA, that rests on a narrow set of assumptions. So think about if you're in class and all of a sudden you hear everybody cheering and clapping. That's not part of their sound study. When you think about the hit of the bats and you're in the middle of nursery school and you hear all of that, because you might if it's an after-school program or if it's practices, none of that was factored in. So when they're doing a sound study, I would ask that they do a legitimate sound study when there is actually something going on in town, not on a random August day or on a holiday or something like that. Take a look at the parking, take a look at the traffic, take a look at the noise, because if on their own science study, they talked about the ambient noise and 40 was what they recommended, and then it says at a concert hall it should be 20. So anybody who's having music lessons, you would expect it to be quieter. So by their own sound study, they're basically challenging the needs of those schools. So it's things like that that I would ask that the language be very specific when they're talking about lighting. The light on the new lights will go off of the new metallic structures, right? Light reflects. They're saying that it won't be a floodlight. We heard that. It would be more the effect of a glow and ambiance rather than a spotlight. But to say that there's no new lighting isn't true. And as somebody who lives nearby, I don't really want to hear the 20 games, and I don't really want my kids' lessons to be negatively impacted by the sound. So I would just ask that you take a lot of scrutiny to the sound study, the lighting study, the traffic, and the pattern, because that will, all due respect to council, negatively impact us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public before we close the public meeting? Seeing none, I think we'll close the public meeting and go into discussion. I'll kick off with a couple remarks and then let's dive in, please. I think, we've learned a lot tonight, both from the presenters from Iona and from the public. And each time we have these meetings, I think we learn more, which is valuable. I think the one thing I would want to note is we had a prior meeting, and I think based on the resubmission from Iona, they were listening at the last meeting. And I think there have been some constructive changes to their program since we had last met. And I'm certain that they are also listening tonight. And with that, I'll kick it out to anyone else from the board who would like to comment.
Is it fair to ask a follow-up technical question at this point, or are we
You betcha. Okay. Floor is yours.
There's been discussions of the sound study, and my understanding of the sound study is that it was meant to establish the level of ambient noise at the time of the soundings. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if you did it on a quiet August day, you would be understating the background ambient noise. Is that correct?
Would someone from Iona want to go to the mic and respond, please?
I'm going to respectfully request that we put this over to the next meeting on noise because we don't have our expert here.
Oh,
tonight,
okay, I'm sorry.
And we will have our expert at the next meeting and we'll certainly address the question.
Okay.
That you've asked. But you don't want a lawyer's answer to your noise question.
No, thanks.
Well put. We did close the public meeting. Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that the sound analysis that was done is not adequate.
I think from your comments, we understand your perspective on that, definitely. We heard you. Yeah. Other discussion here at the board at this point?
I'll make a few comments. I think one of the challenges our planning board regularly faces in this community is how do we continue to progress and encourage investment in our community, which we recognize, whether it's the homes or the commercial district, can be very dated and needs to be updated. And it's striking that balance of allowing real estate owners to develop and modernize their properties without impacting their neighbors. And whether it's a home that's being updated to be increased in size or renovated, or in this case, Iona trying to update a field that was frankly left in a dilapidated state, right? We have to recognize Concordia left things in a very difficult position. We've reviewed homes that were left in dilapidated states that we wanted to maintain and wanted to renovate, but was effectively condemned. And so there's a lot of that work. And I think what we're trying to do, what this board is trying to do, is trying to find that balance between all the parties involved. I think the other thing I would say is on this project, we are reviewing a number of issues that are of a focus. I think it's been very clearly noted that it has to do with existing water issues, which Iona is partially responsible for the water on its area, but we recognize there are water issues down Crawford that are attempting to be addressed by the village. There are substantial traffic issues in the area, whether it's on Rose Avenue, getting access. A third would be, so those are existing issues. There are new issues that are with respect to increased noise and sound pollution. And then the other one would be appropriate safety in the area, right? I think those are the big four ones that have been articulated here. The last thing I would note is questions that I have for Iona going forward that would be important information for the next meeting. I think, and I'm just going to state them here. One is understanding what is the requirement for a Division I field to have a PA system. Is it a requirement to be part of a Division I school or not? Second is really trying to understand what the traffic circulation will look like out of the G parking lot. Having been in that Chapel School, I think we noted you can either go right to north or you can turn left back into the Iona lot to go back out onto 22. And out of 22, technically you can only turn right. But understanding those traffic flows and how Iona plans to manage that would be helpful. I think the third would be a signage plan about where to park. I think consistently we've heard there are issues around where people should be directed to park. There is no direction today. Everyone just naturally sees rows. So understanding, and that goes to the circulation concept. And the last one would be understanding what the construction footprint looks like over the 8 to 10 month construction process. There are numerous students, there are residents in the area, and people in the conservatory. So understanding how that footprint changes over time with trucks, vehicles, and that it won't overly impact or endanger some of those young residents in the area would be very helpful for me. Thank you.
Please, go ahead.
I'd like to find out more about, the comment was made that there was widespread opposition to what we're talking about tonight. And 800 signatures from Bronxville residents. Are people opposed? No way, no how are we going to go along with this a renovation of the baseball field? Or I heard tonight a number of people saying we're not jumping up and down, but we would support the renovation of the baseball field as long as things were done correctly, as long as there was coordination, as long as there were the proper studies done. So I don't. What is it that people sign?
There's the reference was there's an online petition that was put online that people can put their names on.
Does the petition say?
It outlines a lot of the issues we've heard. They reference stormwater runoff, parking and spillover and traffic, pedestrian safety, noise and light pollution.
Well, I would speculate that each person who signed the petition has their own perspective on this.
And we can look at the wording of the petition. Is it online? Is that what you're saying?
It is online.
Okay, we can check that. Oh, okay.
But if you all have received the letters that have been sent in, I would go by the letters that have been sent out to you guys. Also,
Yep.
I think the records from the residents, I think that's.
And I think, many of the letters have been very thoughtful and thorough. And, I think the planning board here really appreciates that the information that we're getting back from everybody. So, but I do think this is something that, we can address the studies, we can address a lot of these issues generally to get most people satisfied with where we are with this.
Other comments? Did anyone want to add anything further?
I think my comments are already have been addressed, that we're putting the diligence into this. We're looking at the study seriously. We're using the consultants that are available to us. We're asking questions. We're making as many public sessions like tonight is a special session. So we're treating it seriously. We were here a week and a half ago for a regular session. We're back. So I think that, you should have confidence that we are taking the time to really dig into this and make sure that we are striking the balance that Michael called out.
Michael, is it appropriate to discuss the timing of the process in the sense, not so much in days and numbers, but the sequencing? Because I think it'd be useful to know when we can make the notice of determination of significance, what we need to get from other agencies, and when that's
Yeah,
expected.
we have counsel here who could comment. My understanding is that we are the lead agency on this, and so we take the first step in this process, but perhaps counsel could come to the mic and speak to the process. The handheld is much better.
Jim Stout, Village Council. So I think what you're addressing is what we call the secret process and the timing of the secret process. Under the secret process, you have to make what's called a determination of significance. My understanding is that in order to do that, timing-wise, you cannot do it until 30 days after there was a circulation of what we call the lead agency notice. So at a previous meeting, you declared your intent to be lead agency. That declaration and the application materials then had to be circulated to what we call all other involved agencies. There are a number of other involved agencies, your own zoning board, the New York State Department of Transportation because of Route 22, et cetera. Once that circulation is done, 30 days have to pass before you can make a secret determination. I don't think those 30 days have quite passed yet, if I understand when the circulation was done, but I think they will have passed by your next meeting.
Okay.
So that's a lawyer's answer to, I think you would be in a position to make a secret determination, not tonight, but you could make one anytime beginning with your next meeting.
And the
Councilor Froyone, is that your understanding as well? Yeah. Yeah, I saw in our engineering review today that the circulation of the secret materials was done in the last, it's in our engineer's review. I can pull it out. It was done. You looking at it, fellas? It says when the circulation was done, but quite sure by your next meeting. October 2nd. Yeah. Okay.
That all computes.
Yeah.
And the sequence from here, let's say that at a future meeting, we approve a program. Does it then go to zoning? What are the steps beyond planning?
Right.
board?
So your zoning board, there's also variances involved with this. I think there's a little work needs to be done to exactly define what they are. They probably haven't been totally defined yet. I know I saw in one of the review memos that a little more data is needed about exact distances and so forth. And probably the applicants were waiting to know whether you had any minor adjustments before they absolutely nail them down. But at some point, this is for discussion with you and your consultants, but at some point, you will, so to speak, release the applicant to the Zoning Board of Appeals. You'll be at a point where you think you've done enough review. You may have comments for the zoning board. You may have recommendation for the zoning board. So at some point, you'll release the applicant to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the zoning board to make its decision on the variances. You'll be deciding, and this is something, again, that we can discuss internally about how this wants to be sequenced. You'll be deciding whether you want to release it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, let the Zoning Board of Appeals make their decision, and then come back to you for the final determination on the site plan, depending on what the zoning board does, or whether you'll want to grant some kind of an approval conditioned on the zoning board. That's all to be discussed within the next few weeks. And they have other permits they need to get, but in terms of board approvals,
In terms of our role.
it's your board, it's primarily your board, the Zoning Board of Appeals. I think there's already been some discussion with design review. So is that responsive to your
Yes,
question?
okay. Yes, I have an additional question, which is, there's no requirement that we wait for input from the other involved agencies. After the 30 days passes, we're free to make that determination.
Right, well, the waiting is the 30 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the secret process is something you could talk a long time about. Depending on your determination, the secret process could continue. Your initial determination will really be whether the secret process has been concluded, or whether you want this to go into a deeper secret process that then has its own quite lengthy timetables.
And so just to pick up one more point, Jim, from what you raised is, I think some of the timing will also be up to Iona, as they've heard tonight, as they make judgments about what, if any, changes in their studies or in their plan they would make based on this. They will determine the timing for when they think it's right to come back to this board. It could be at the next meeting. It could be at the meeting after, to correct me, but I don't think we have them on a short leash of any kind.
That's correct. That's correct. They may say to you that, we're going to need more time between this meeting And then between this meeting and the next meeting, and also you need to get their responses in enough time in advance of your meeting, so they could say to you, we're not looking to be on for your next meeting since we had the special meeting tonight, but the following meeting. That's, again, that's all.
But I
part of-
think in general, what we're trying to communicate here, both to the public and to Iona by having this special meeting tonight, is we're prepared to, work promptly as the parties are prepared to work.
Thank you very much.
Any questions for our experts while we're here before we consider a potential adjournment? I think, the bottom line for everyone here is that we've learned a lot. No decisions tonight, but I think we're getting closer to something that would be actionable here. And so we'll look forward to further steps in this process, and we appreciate the input we're getting from everyone. And with that, if there's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you, everybody.
They were like peppering everyone with this. I can dig up the link. I printed it at the time, but